being a pro athlete. You're not a race car driver, but it is a risky career. I wonder if it was hard for you to take risks with your money when you started investing.
If you look at all the graphs, it goes low to high. And of course, there's some bumps in the middle. It's kind of like golf, right? You have some birdies, you have some bogeys, but in the end of the day, you have to trust that, 18 holes is going to be good. And so you have to have a little ice in your belly and certainly not panic when the market or people are selling. For me, it's in the long term, but yeah, you can't sit and stare at the index every day. It would be quite stressful. But I have faith in the market. I have faith in the economy overall around the world for a long period of time. So we all know that you can't time it because you see some news and you're like, okay, and then the market does the opposite. So I just kind of ride it.
Hey everyone, I'm Jean Chatzky. Thanks so much for joining me today on HerMoney, where we talk about personal finance and how money touches everything in our lives. Today we're going to be talking with Annika Sorenstam, one of the best pro golfers, female pro golfers the world has ever seen. So what does this have to do with your money? Well, I got to tell you, I see a number of parallels between what it takes to get good enough at a sport to play, let alone play professionally, and the time and energy it takes to get good at managing your personal finances. We'll talk about that. But Annika is also a woman like many of us who started out with very little money, made some, and had to learn how to first budget it and then invest it. That turned out to be something that she not only enjoyed but became quite good at. We'll ask her how she did that. She's also well known throughout the industry for her mentorship of young women. She'll tell us why that's so important and what it takes to be a good mentor and mentee. And finally, an admission. I don't play golf. I play mini golf, but I don't play golf. But I've always wondered if for my career or my mental health, I should take it up. We will get her advice on that. Annika, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you very much, Jean. It's a pleasure to be here.
I started the show by talking about what it takes to master anything, whether that's the game of golf or our personal finances. What worked for you when you were getting psyched up for a big match, an important conversation, a big game? What is your take on mastery?
Well, I think that's it's a very big word, and obviously something I continued to work on. But I like to do my best. I think the key really to do well, to perform, is to be prepared. To whether to do what I do is obviously athletics. So making sure I practice, making sure I get the right sleep, making sure I eat correctly, just make sure I've done the prep work, whether it's, practice rounds or just working with my coach, everything. I think preparation is so important so that you're ready, not just physically, but also mentally. I think just in general in life to do something, I think being ready and being there, whether you need to do research or whether you just need to be on your game. You can't just show up and think that everything is going to fall in place. Sometimes you add a little luck to it, but I think preparation is really the key and being ready to execute when you're there. So I spend a lot of time doing that. And that's why I practice. The word practice comes back. And you mentioned discipline. All of those things come together, right? You need discipline to practice and discipline to prepare.
Sometimes you can be disciplined, you can do everything right, and you still wake up on the wrong side of the bed. You wake up just feeling like, I don't have it in me today to tackle this challenge. How'd you get through those days?
I think we all have those days. I think it's just, we're humans, right? I like to say that I'm a human being that play golf. I'm not just a golfer trying to be a human, right? We all have our ups and downs, and I think it's just very normal. But, I like to, when it comes to my golf, I'm very kind of strict when it comes to routines, whether it's a practice routine, playing routine, pre-shot routine, just kind of creating an environment where I feel comfortable, an environment where I'm focusing more on what I got to do and not so much on the results and the aftermath and, kind of the accolades that come with it, or maybe even the failure that you might think about. Just kind of focus on what I got to do. So routines are really important to me. And again, everything is just, I would say it's quite structured or organized. And because that makes me feel a lot more relaxed. I like to say I'm a little bit of a type A personality, maybe. Like to have my hands in a lot of things just because that's how I feel comfortable knowing I'm not a person maybe that loves to get things just thrown at me and kind of clean up the mess. On the contrary, I rather have things organized prior.
Do you take the same approach to your financial life, or have you taken the same approach to your financial life? As I listen to you talk about small habits and those small habits and that discipline being the building blocks of being good at your sport, I'm relating on a couple of levels. I'm training for a marathon right now, and I got up this morning and I ran the 5 miles that was on my schedule, even though I really did not want to run the 5 miles that was on my schedule, but it said 5, so I did them. But I also think, when it comes to our financial lives, we have savings goals. We have a certain percentage we're trying to put away. We try, to keep our credit card debt at a reasonable level. Have you taken that same approach to these other parts of your life?
Absolutely. No, I think you're spot on. And I'm excited for you to run a marathon. I run half marathons, but I never got to the full one. So I wish you good luck there. But you're right. I mean, it's
Thank
about
you.
the discipline and everything. And honestly, when growing up, I was all into all kinds of sports and, I've never really been money driven or, I had what I needed, right? I mean, just enough. My parents supported me, but, nothing luxurious by any means, but just to kind of what I needed, I had. And then when I started to make my first checks as a professional, I realized that I gotta take responsibility. I gotta be accountable for this. And, now I'd bought a home and I had a car and all of a sudden you have some bills. And so I wanted to be in charge of it. I wanted to know where is it going and what do I need? And so I remember my dad said, I think you should do a budget. And I was like, a budget? He says, what do you think, it's going to cost you? This was in my early career in 1994. And so I sat down and plotted down some numbers, travel, flights and hotel and food and, caddy fee or whatever you thought it was. And I came up with a number and, my dad didn't say yes or no. He said, okay, well, this is kind of what, focus on this. And I remember my first check, I made pretty much exactly what my budget was for the whole year. And I was thrilled. And after that, I never really looked back at how much I made. It was just more, I know I can survive with this. And now it's just focusing on my goals of winning golf tournaments and performing well and not have to worry about that. But I did attack it very similar to my approach in life. It's a big picture. And I think it's worked quite well because I'm very interested in finances. And I know we're going to go into that later in our discussion. But yeah, it's a big part of who I am.
The wonderful thing, and I'm sure there are people who are listening who are saying, gosh, how great would it be to get a check and know that your budget for the entire year is covered, right? I mean, that's just such a gift, but it also gives you some excess, right? It gives you, with the check that came after that, the opportunities to invest that money, to do something different with it, to take a little risk, to grow it. How did you enter that part of your financial journey?
Yeah, so I'm quite a big saver. I like to say I certainly buy the essentials that I need, but I don't waste money by any means. It's a funny story because once I stopped making these checks, because I started to play some good golf, and I remember the end of the year I was looking at my bank account and I knew that yes, I was very happy with what I saw, but I knew that it shouldn't just be sitting there. I studied to be a chemical engineer. I studied nutrition. So finances was not really, I love math, but finances was never really my thing. But I knew that you shouldn't have everything just sitting in the bank. So I remember calling my agent at the time, the agency I was with, and I told them, I said, hey, I don't think everything should sit here. I think the money needs to work for me. And I'll never forget, they said, well, Annika, you never told us. And I thought, well, why would you have a financial advisor that doesn't even give you advice? So needless to say, I didn't stay with them any longer because I thought that was their responsibility to give me some advice. And then, of course, then I would say yes or no, and I agree or explain why, etc. So I bought, Economics 101, at the bookstore and started to read. And I realized that I should invest my money. And I really enjoyed that process because, as you know, investing is a very big word. I mean, you could invest in a lot of different things. But that was my eye opener to investing. So I took that money and I divided it up like in a big pie chart. And since I was at that time 24, 25, figuring I have time on my hands. And so I was, started to invest in stocks and some large cap and some mid caps and some small caps and really just diversify it. And that was in 1997. And I still have that portfolio and it's just been fun to watch.
It is fun to watch, but I'm struck by the fact that you say you're quite a big saver. And I think sometimes for people who take a lot of risk in their careers, and being a pro athlete, I would say, you're not a race car driver, but it is a risky career. I wonder if it was hard for you to take risks with your money when you started investing. Was that something that you struggled with at all, or did you just sort of read the books and listen to history and know that it would work out in the end?
Yeah, Warren Buffett was somebody I listened to, and he still is a believer in big caps, and he bought stocks. And I know he's a lot older now, but he was talking about investing when he was a young man, and just with time, if you look at all the graphs, it goes low to high, and of course there's some bumps in the middle. It's kind of like golf, right? You have some birdies, you have some bogeys, but in the end of the day, you have to trust that 18 holes is going to be good. And so you have to have a little ice in your belly and certainly not panic when the market or people are selling. On the contrary, I buy when people sell and I just kind of stay there. And for me, it's in the long term. But yeah, you can't sit and stare at the index every day. It would be quite stressful. But I have faith in the market. I have faith in the economy overall around the world for a long period of time. So yeah, but it's interesting. I do trust the big companies and I do some research. I sell some here and there, but we all know that you can't time it. And I'm not going to try to time it because you see some news and you're like, okay. And then the market does the opposite. So I just kind of ride it overall. And of course, I have some really good financial advisors today that give me some advice on, especially, when now I'm not 24 anymore. I'm double the age, so I've taken off some of the equity portions in my pie chart and have some treasury bonds, etc. And it's not as exciting, but when you have a family, you got to think about, having a little bit of a safer approach.
When you think back, what's your best investment? And did you have a worst investment?
Oh, I definitely have some worst. I go back to what people say, buy what you know. I'm sure you've heard a similar expression,
yes.
But, you have friends here and there and you get some tips or something and you're like, well, maybe I trust that person. And then we don't have crystal balls, right? So it's just a matter of, I think, again, just think about the future and it's just these personal needs and is the growth there and just kind of stick with it. My dad worked for IBM. And so, of course, one of my first few stocks was IBM. And so I have like a personal tie to that. And then, I think investments that have been well has also been in housing. I bought in places where, land is scarce, as you know, and if you buy in the right places, it will go up with time. And so I've been a little fortunate to do that. But yeah, I've had some terrible ones when you think you're going to do well and they go belly up and then you wish you wouldn't have done it. So you really got to be careful and what you pick because, you read stories. A lot of great stories of people building something in the garage and then they go public and, they become billionaires. But it's such a small percentage that happens to, just kind of like golf, there's a lot of golfers out there. How many turn professional and how many win the US Open, so I think the odds are very similar there.
Yeah, absolutely. Which means that a lot of these young golfers that you are mentoring need some very specific financial advice and some very specific career advice. So I want to talk about the off course professional development you provide for women through the Annika Women's All Pro Tour. I think it's really important. It's something that we do not hear enough about. How do you prepare female golfers for what's coming and life on and off the course?
I think the key is to listen, because every individual have their own story and kind of their own goals and their own journey. So I think just listening to these young girls and, for them to have somebody to talk to and vent about something, or everything is so different. Like finances could be important to one player, and then working with a caddy could be important for somebody else. Or, what's your course management? How do you think about the course, and how do you forget about bad shots, and how do you move on? Or it could be, how to train physically. And, I'm not an expert by any means, but, I've done a lot of it and learned a lot. And so just kind of share my story and give them advice, what I think works. But a lot of it is just giving them the tools to be able to try and, think about it and let them figure out on their own. I always feel like you can really be your best coach if you just get information and figure it out. And because when you're in the heat of the moment, as far as a competition, your coach could be on the sideline, but you're on your own. You got to pull the trigger. You got to choose the shot you want to hit, what club are you going to hit, and where do you want the spot to land on the green, or just whatever it is. I mean, you have to be able to be accountable for that. And by having a clear mind and been in that situation before, I think it's really the importance of it. But I really enjoy the mentoring part because you see that you can make a difference in somebody's lives. And sometimes, I remember growing up, I was, quite shy by nature, and I would be afraid to ask for advice because it's like you're somehow admitting that you don't know, or you don't want to appear that you're uncomfortable, but you'd be amazed when you start asking. People are like, well, I want to help. Let me share your story. But then there's a fine line of having too much information also. But it's cool to hear. I like hearing other people that have been successful. How did they approach it, and what are they thinking, and what are some of the lessons they learned? And that's really how I've achieved my success and where I am today.
How did you get over that? I mean, you if you grow up shy or introverted, like so many people do these days, it's difficult to start asking for advice, for help. How did you get yourself to actually just dig in and start asking?
I think in the beginning, it was a lot of, instead of asking, it was a lot of looking and learning, observing. Especially in golf, I would observe other players. I would look at the Hall of Famers, for example, on the driving range. What are their routines, and how's their swing look, and what are they doing? Okay, they have a coach there, and you just, what kind of equipment. So I would just kind of look and learn and not so much be in the way and ask questions. And then eventually starting to build some friendships. And then I felt a lot more at ease asking. And then we started to share ideas. You'd go from learning and watching to being part of it, and then to, share those and explore together. And then I ended up, as with my career, and then all of a sudden people are asking me. So it was a nice turnaround. But I know as far as just the financial aspect of it, I would, like I said, I bought that book, and I look at business leaders, and, I would, it's not just always what are they doing that they're doing well.
Mm-hmm.
It was also like, what are people doing that's not working, right? You can also learn from that, and also look at people and say, you know what, that's not what I want to do. Thanks for being an example of how I not want to do things. And so I think a lot of that's kind of been my approach. I mean, of course, I got my parents, my support system at home to guide me. And but throughout my career, I met some really wonderful people that have been successful, whether it's the lumber industry or tech industry or health industry or whatever. But in the end of the day, I think you would agree with me, Jane. It's just with different products and different services, but to be successful, it's all about putting in the work. My dad told me a long time ago, there are no shortcuts to success. I don't care what field you're in. If you want to be a good mom, you have to put in the hours and be there. And same thing to be a lawyer or whatever. There are no shortcuts. And I think we all learn from our mistakes. And so I think, golf has really, taught me so much about life and other areas.
I think when you're a woman, there's also an element of making sure that you are being paid fairly. And you've had many, many years of dealing with sponsors, dealing with contracts. As you look at, again, young women who are coming up, what do they need to know, no matter what field they're in, about getting paid what they're worth?
Yeah, that's a very, very good comment. I think a lot of women, we settle. We're happy with, oh, that's what I'm getting. So don't ask questions, just kind of take it and go with it. I also feel like a lot of women, and I will throw myself in here too, is we feel like we have to over deliver all the time. There's this finding the right balance in life. And we all, as women, always feel like we got to do everything right. And it's just hard to find that balance. And then just know if you don't over deliver, then it's easy to feel like you're not accomplished, or maybe your confidence is lacking, and that you're letting people down. In the end of the day, you do have to put the work in and prove that you are the right person. But I think women have a hard time because they're afraid that maybe they will get fired, or maybe people will look at them as being greedy, or all kinds of thoughts. So I think having confidence in who you are and what you stand for and what you do is really important.
Transitioning from a professional sports career, or really any professional career, to the life you have after can be financially challenging. It can be emotionally challenging to wonder, what is my place now? How have you dealt with this?
I'm lucky that I stepped away on my own terms in golf. I retired, so to speak. We were getting married, Mike and I, and we wanted to start a family. I had some other interests, my foundation. I was designing some golf courses. I had lots of projects in the works. So I was super excited about the next challenge. So I really didn't look back and thought too much about what's going to happen when I leave the tour, when I don't have a tournament every week, when I don't have something to grind for. So my mind was totally occupied with other things. And I think that really helped me. There was a sense of peace knowing that I had decided to leave. It wasn't like I was forced to leave because I had an injury, or, I lost my status on the tour and I had no place to play. It's just, I literally just said, you know what, this is going to be my last year and I'm going to focus on this. And so my energy just kind of pivoted, and I was, totally excited on this new chapter because I had actually just lost my motivation and interest. I had achieved so much more than I ever thought I could. And I was ready for something else. And so, building that, brand of businesses, and it was a new chapter, and it's exciting, with a new chapter. And so that's when I kind of put things together. But what was interesting, it was in 2008. From a financial standpoint, it probably wasn't the best timing, but I obviously didn't know that because I've already made up my mind in the beginning of 2008, and this financial crisis came later. And so you can imagine, I started this academy, and it was a high-end academy, and people were not spending money, donations from foundation, people were not spending money. I had a wine label, a high-end wine label. Nobody was buying. They were sitting on their hands, as you know. And so I was like, wow, this is hard. And because I stepped into the business world at a time when I was confidence, super confidence in my game. I'd achieved everything I wanted. I was just feeling confident. Everything I did turned out. And all of a sudden it was like, hang on a minute, this is hard work. And so, but it was good because it made me focus on kind of my morals, my values, but also refresh my memory that it takes time to build things. I mean, I didn't become a good golfer overnight. And as you know, in business, I mean, it takes years and years and years and a lot of, ups and downs to achieve something. And so you need that persistence. So, and looking back, I think it turned out okay.
It's such an important lesson, right? I mean, of course, you had no idea at the beginning of 2008 that 2008 was going to be 2008, and having to pivot, having to really dig in and deal with all of those things. That is something. One of the things that you have continued to dig in on, to focus on, has been the Annika Foundation. Tell us a little bit about the work that you do there.
Yeah, so I started that in 2007. I knew that my career was going to come to an end at some point. And before it was coming to an end, I wanted to build something or plant some seed for something, in the future. And what was important to me, and still is be able to give back and say thank you. I wanted to, say thank you to golf and to the people I've met and that have helped me on my journey, and how can I kind of pay it forward? So the idea of the foundation to, do the things that I enjoy, which is obviously golf, competition worldwide, and young girls. So we kind of put them all and we put it in the blender, and here we came out with the concept of golf tournaments around the world. And at that time, it really, of course, girls golf existed and women's golf, but it wasn't to the extent that it is today. I remember when I looked at the statistics then, only 17% or so out of all the junior golfers in America were girls. I mean, that's like less than 1 in 5 juniors. And I was like, well, this is not right. Golf is a sport for everyone. And how can I inspire the next generation to live their dream kind of like I'm living my dream? So I think those, initiatives at that time the timing was right. And so we started, and it was just, of course, it's been a learning experience, but every time we had these tournaments, and we have 72 girls that show up, and every time it was like this amazing feeling of be able to help these young girls, fulfill their dreams, having another playing opportunity or meeting other girls, or just expose them to this wonderful game and teaching them things, because our tagline is more than golf. So it's not just a competition. We would have a workshop, whether it was fitness or nutrition or anything that could just help them along the way. We're more than just hitting a 7-iron. We want it to be a lot more than that. So, here you take 17 years forward, which is amazing how time flies, but we now have 9 global tournaments, and we have initiatives for young girls at the age of 6 up to sponsoring, you mentioned the Annika Women's All Pro Tour event, and it's been great. We have a development program. We now sponsor 8 young ladies that have literally just graduated from college, and they're in that between stage. They don't have the tour status, and they do want to play, but they don't really know where to go. So we're helping them with a little financial aid, but also opportunity to practice at a club, Old Barnwell, and just in South Carolina, and they housing it as well, and because it is expensive. Remember, sure. I told you about the budget that I did, and so they've done the same thing, and so you need a little help along the way. So yeah, so we have tournaments in South America, we have in Europe, we have in Asia, and of course here in America, and we have a college event, and we give out an award to the best collegiate female player. So we've gone from one little young girl to now it's been almost 7,000 girls throughout the years, and almost $9 million to junior girls golf. And now you can see that if you look at all the juniors in America, especially, we're up to about 34%. So now it's about a third of all juniors that are playing golf today are women. And so it's fun to see the growth, but we're not stopping at this point, because I'm seeing a lot of what we call Annika alumni that I saw when they were 12 years old. They're now they're now on the tour and playing, and it's just been a lot of fun.
You've got sponsors, of course, behind your work. We share one of them in Gainbridge. They are a title sponsor of your event, and they are also a sponsor of this podcast. What does having sponsors like Gainbridge do for the work that you're able to do?
Well, we couldn't do it without companies like Gainbridge. I mean, they are a huge believer in women and women's sports, and to empower them to fulfill their dreams. And it's been incredible to see. And it's not just golf. I mean, as you know, it's tennis and it's basketball and it's car racing, etc., just to name a few. And they see the impact that they're making. Their investment is paying off with these women and powerful women. And then that's trickling down. It inspires others. And that's what you need. You need leaders like Gainbridge to have that vision and share that, because that creates opportunities. And I think that's really what our foundation is all about. But you need help from big people like that to be able to facilitate some of these initiatives that we have.
I want to wrap this podcast by talking just a little about the game of golf. I'm not a golfer. My mother was a golfer. And as you said, I mean, the National Golf Foundation now says there are 6.5 million female golfers, and that's up from 5.5 million in just a few years back in 2019. So the sport is growing. Give me your best golf pitch. I mean, what is it about golf that you love so much, and why? I've heard for years it is the key to success. It's a game, as you just said, you can play forever. Why should we all play golf?
Well, for me, it's easy. It is a game you can play forever. It's a game you can play with family, different generations, different skill level, different gender, different heights and sizes. And you can be outside. I mean, it's a physical sport without being extremely physical. It's a mental sport. So you're really working all parts of your body, your brain, your heart, and it's cardiovascular at the same time. And it's challenging, but it's fun because every day is so different. You can play courses around the world and they're just different. And then the social aspect of it, I think it's so important, especially when you get older. You're limited to certain things you can do, but the social aspect, you can talk between shots and share stories, and it's always something to work on. I mean, it's the driving, it's the irons, the putting, maybe the chipping. And I grew up playing tennis, and my backhand was very weak, and maybe not a surprise, but all my opponents, they kept hitting on my backhand. And it was frustrating. In golf, you can kind of play to your own strength, and you can practice on your own. You don't need a partner like you do in some other sports. So it's there's a lot of reasons. Obviously, I'm a big advocate of the sport, and our family plays. My parents play, and so we go out there 3 generations. You tell me what other sports you can do that and still have a good time and still be friends by the end of the day.
Sounds perfect. We're going to have to step me up from the putt-putt course on Long Beach Island and get me out there one of these days. Annika Sorenstam, thank you so much for this great conversation. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.